Hi everybody, this is Rabbi David Fohrman and welcome to Parshat Ha'azinu. You are watching Aleph Beta. This is the second in a series of 3 videos that I'm going to do with you, kind of trying to tie together the end of the Torah, almost connecting the middle of the Torah to the end of the Torah. Last week I suggested that I was going to do this with you through the lens of the book of Psalms. I began to delineate a theory that a particular section of the book of Psalms, Psalm number 90, is a kind of insider's view into the spiritual world of the prayer that Moses expressed to God at the darkest moment of Israel's history, in the aftermath of the golden calf. In that prayer, he had beseeched God to allow the people of Israel to enter the land like the stars of the heavens, as was promised to the forefathers. And indeed, Moses lives to see the realization of that prayer, the blessing that he gives to the people just before his death, when they are assembled at his feet by the hundreds and by the thousands, like the stars of the heaven, and they will go into the land, even though he will not. These are the themes of Psalm number 90 in its most basic outline. But I want to start going beyond the basic outline with you and to actually delve into this psalm, and I think we'll discover a fascinating world of kind of spiritual richness here. Let me just jump in here with the first sentence or two. Tfilah Moshe Isha Elokim, a prayer of Moses, the man of God. Hashem, Lord, Ma'on Ata Hayita Lanu B'dor V'dor. You have been a habitation for us from generation to generation. You've been the environment in which we live, a home in which we live almost. And now that might seem to be a strange thing to say about God. We don't usually think about God that way, but the next verse of the psalm kind of elaborates it for you. B'terem harim yulodu, before even the mountains were born, vatcholel eretz vatevel, before the land and the bedrock of the earth was ever carved out, even before that, going back into the infinite recesses of time, you were there. You were always God. Okay, so what does this really mean? What the psalmist is getting at here is that God, in a kind of curious way, is the place in which we all live. It's like there's a home within a home within a home, and you just have to regress to the largest, most fundamental home at all. In other words, if I would ask you, what is your home? What's the environment in which you live? So you might say your house, but your house also lives somewhere. There's an environment for the house, right? That's the land that it's built upon. But if you look at land surface, the surface of the land that we look and see, that also has an environment, which is the bedrock of the planet. And the bedrock of the planet, that too has an environment in which it exists. That comes from somewhere too. That comes from the infinite creator himself. So God really is our home, the environment that encompasses us all. Okay, so much for the first verse or two here of Psalm 90. But now I want to take you actually to the last verse of Psalm 90, and you'll see something astounding. The first clue to the relationship between these verses comes with actually just a single word. Ma'on. Ma'on, you'll recall, that's the Hebrew word for the idea of habitation, environment, that God is the environment or the home, the domicile in which we all live. Okay, so just meditate on that word for a moment. Ma'on, how do you spell it? Mem, ayin, vav, nun. And now take your eyes away from the very beginning of the psalm and go to the very end of Psalm 90 and see if you find a word that sort of kind of reminds you of that. Vayihi noam Hashem Elokeinu aleinu. Let the pleasantness of God descend upon us. The word there for pleasantness, you know how you spell it? Nun, vav, ayin, mem. Guess what, boys and girls? That's ma'on spelled backwards. Now, isn't that interesting? I want to suggest to you that it's not just the word ma'on that becomes inverted in the last verse of the psalm to become noam. It's the larger ideas of the verse as well. I mean, that's a kind of mind-bending notion. The first verse is talking about God creating the world, which is this habitation for us, and that God himself is sort of a habitation for that, so we sort of live within God, if you will, as strange as that may sound. But now you're suggesting to me that the last verse might be talking about some sort of mirror image of that idea? That's like so dizzying, I have no idea what that would even mean. But just hold on to your horses and let's just explore that idea for a quick second. What exactly does the last verse of the psalm say? You'll see actually that it expresses its own little prayer. If Psalm 90 as a whole is a prayer of Moses, here's a little prayer within a prayer. Vayihi noam Hashem Elokeinu aleinu. God, please allow the pleasantness of you, our God, to descend upon us. U'ma'aseh yadeinu konana aleinu. And the works of our hands, God, we want you to establish those and to make them successful. Okay, so those are kind of nice poetic words, but what exactly does that mean? What's the idea here? Well, as it turns out, the sages of the Medrash actually suggest that these last words of Psalm 90 were once expressed by Moses at a certain crucial moment in the 5 books of Moses. You know, we had been talking about Psalm 90 as a poetic expression of Moses' prayer of the golden calf. The sages now are going to point to one other moment in history they want us to look to. They suggest that these last words of Moses were actually said by Moses during the dedication ceremony of the Tabernacle. If you look carefully in the Torah, the very end of the book of Exodus, it says that Moses blessed the people after they had done all of their hard work in making the temple complete. And the sages suggest that the words of that blessing were the last words of Psalm 90. So here's what the rabbis say. They tell a story. They say that, when everything was complete, when the people had built everything for the Mishkan, for the Tabernacle, and they'd offered all the offerings of the dedication ceremony, God's presence had not yet come into the Tabernacle. Aaron, the high priest, knew it. The people knew it. And they were chagrined and they were ashamed. And they thought the whole enterprise was just a terrible failure. They had failed to bring God's presence into the world. Aaron approached Moses and said, I know why this happened. God's angry at me, right? It was the golden calf. We haven't achieved forgiveness for that yet. And the people thought it was the golden calf. And Moses turns to the people and turns to Aaron and blesses them all, and this is what he says. Vayihi noam Hashem Elokeinu aleinu. Let the pleasantness of God come upon us. The pleasantness of God, according to the Medrash, is a euphemism for the Shekhinah, for the presence of God. Let the presence of God descend upon us. U'ma'aseh yadeinu konana aleinu. And God, we need you to establish the works of our hands, to make the works of our hands a success. This Mishkan that we've built it for you, to come inside, for it to be your home. Make the works of our hands successful. Don't allow all this work to have been in vain. Come into the works of our hands and be at home within us. Fascinating. If you accept the sage's interpretation of these words, if you see the end of the psalm as a plea by Moses that God should inhabit the Mishkan, the works of our human hands, you know what the implication of that is? The implication is that this last verse of Psalm 90 is in fact a mirror image of the first verse of the psalm. The first verse says that God, at the earliest moments of creation, what did he make? He made a God-made environment for us. We call it the world. That's where we live. And because of that, we sort of live within God, the maker of that world. And now go to the last verse of the psalm. The last verse focuses on us, mankind, the one who dwells, so to speak, within God. And it contains a prayer that's an inversion of the first verse. God, I know that I live within you, but I need you to live within me. You made something, the handiwork of your own hands. We call it the universe. Well, I made something too. We call it the Mishkan. Come and inhabit the works of my hands. Don't let this go up in smoke. Ma'aseh yadeinu konana aleinu. Make successful the works of our hands. V'noam Hashem Elokeinu aleinu. And allow your presence to be at home within us. Okay, so all of this is very fine and good, but now I have a challenge for you. How exactly does this all come together? The beginning of the psalm seems to talk about God making a place for us. The end of the psalm seems to talk about us making a place for God. Great, all of that is very well and good, but what does all of this have to do with the themes that we began to trace in Psalm 90 last week? Last week we saw all of these intertextual parallels in Psalm 90 that brought us back to Moses' blessing at the very end of his life at Har Nevo, and perhaps even more significantly, the parallels brought us to another place as well, to Moses' prayer at the golden calf. Okay, so if this is Moses' prayer at the golden calf, so how could it also be Moses' prayer at the inauguration of the Mishkan? What do all these lofty words about habitation in the Mishkan have to do with the issues of survival that were front and center when God was considering destroying the people after the golden calf? Somehow we seem to have a lot of beautiful themes that are starting to emerge in Psalm 90, but almost no idea as how they all connect. How do they all connect? I want to suggest to you next week that Psalm 90 is actually nothing less than the story of the second half of the Torah. All of these seemingly disparate themes joined together into an elegant tapestry, the center of which, in fact, is Moses' prayer at the golden calf. Come back next week and let's tie it all together.
Hi YouTube, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. And for even more amazing Torah videos, check out aleph-beta.org. Just click the link below.